All right, so little information video. It's a 93 Civic coupe. Um, I got this car, had a B20V in it. Motor was bad, car wouldn't start, the harness was all hacked. So, okay, pulled the B series out. And I was like, okay, now it's time to shop for a motor. So, I came across this motor right here. It's a D16y8. It's a full EK-EX swap. Certain things to note. So, people think you gotta run an OBD2 harness. False. You don't have to do that. You can convert back to an OBD1, distributor here, or you can run the OBD2 distributor. Alternator is also something that will have to be addressed unless you decide you want to just repin the OBD2 alternator, which again can be done. I had already previously wired an OBD2 distributor into this car for the OBD1 harness. However, the car wasn't starting. Couldn't figure out why. It didn't have spark. There was nothing happening. I later found that the harness over to the main relay was also hacked. Fixed that one. All done. There's still a mess of wires here. This is a new distributor. This is actually an Integra distributor, though. Certain other things, stupid things about this car. So again, this whole swap is from an EK-EX. It's a full D16y8 swap. Some things, if you go to do the swap, there's a couple things you got to know. Right here, it's going to be a crank angle sensor. That is not needed for OBD1. They don't have that plug in the harness. It's not something you got to worry about. That alternator is actually a B-series alternator. Works perfectly fine, does the job. It's an OBD1 alternator. The plugs are the same. So this has an Integra distributor and an Integra alternator. Again, the car runs perfectly fine. This is also these mounts right here. This is an EK mount. That's an EK mount. The T-bracket in the back has to be from an EG single cam, but the mount itself is the same. This mount's the same. This mount's the same. Let's see. Everything else bolts in. Like that clutch sleeve right there was actually bolted onto the B series. So again, things that you would have to do. Now other modifications would have to be made on your fuel rail. So OBD1 has a return style fuel rail. OBD2 does not have that. Let's see. If I remembered where the fuel rail was, I could show you. But I don't remember where I put it. Scratch that last thing. Because now I see on the... That's actually the fuel rail that came on the motor. And I didn't notice this before. For whatever damn reason. Anyways. So, I just modified the rail in the backside because the mounting studs don't line up. The OBD2 doesn't line up with the OBD1 rail. But I modified the backside of the rail so it's actually like firmly placed. No issues. It's using the OBD2 injectors. I cut the plugs, heat shrink, soldered, put on the OBD2 style plugs for these injectors. Again, this harness was all hacked when I got it. So pulled the harness out, cut it open, fixed all the wires. It was also from an automatic, so there's a couple of plugs that were there that didn't need to be there anymore. Heat shrink, soldered, sealed it all up. It does have an O2 sensor. It's got everything necessary. Next things to note. This car is not an EX. So if you're going to be doing a VTEC swap into a non-VTEC car, i.e. a DX, LX, CX, VX, you will need to run the wires, and you also will need to run a computer that has them, or you can just wire the VTEC to a switch and run it manually. That's your option. This car will be getting it done so I can actually run a computer that has it, so I don't have to run a switch. It's all just time. Right now the car is being run on an Integra computer out of that DA. That's just because it didn't have a P28 in it. And the computer that was in the car is running a fuel map and a timing map that is just completely too aggressive for this motor. It was flooding it out. So I did away with it and said, no, I'll use a stock DA computer for now. Runs the motor perfectly fine. So without the VTEC, running, and with it running on a DA's factory fuel map and ignition map, the thing runs strong. This is a healthy ass swap. I don't know what the mileage was. I went there, pulled the motor out of the car, and I got this whole thing, motor, trans. I didn't take the harnesses, I didn't need it, but motor, trans, axles, mounts, like everything you see to put into this car. And by the way, those are EK axles. Yes, they bolt into this car. Zero issues whatsoever. So again, just to recap, things that you got to modify. If you decide to use an OBD1 rail like I did, you're going to have to modify the rail. If you can use OBD2 injectors, you got to modify the plugs. If you're going to run the OBD2 distributor, you got to modify that as well. So you'll notice on the OBD2 distributor, it's a single plug versus OBD1. This has two plugs, as you see here, 1, 2. Very, very simple swap. Very, very simple wiring. It seems daunting. Don't let it distract you, okay? Don't let it just haunt you. Very easy to do. Again, extra wires here. It doesn't have a temp sensor right now. I'm gonna wire in something else. This car has a purpose per se. Daily driver, but it's also going to mostly be a track car. So this car has a manual rack in it, so no power steering, as noticed here. No AC, didn't have the lines in it to begin with. There is no heater core in the car. There's no condenser. There's nothing. It's just a bare car. So, again, OBD2 swap, super, super easy. You don't need that plug there. That's going to be eliminated because OBD1 does not have it. So, simple modifications. You can use an OBD1 distributor. Make sure it's a VTEC distributor. It'll actually bolt up properly. This one does not. It's got two bolts that actually mount in. This one here, and then the one that's over there on that side. The fuel rail. If you're going to use the OBD2 fuel rail, you'll have to lengthen some hoses for the return. You could probably make that work without an issue, and then you just use the OBD1 injectors. So you can use your stock harness. Again, so if you have an EX though, now if this car was an EX, I wouldn't have to wire in VTEC wires, and you would probably already have a P28, so it'll already have VTEC programmed into the computer, and you just plug and play and you're done. The solenoid and the pressure switch are exactly the same as what would be on a Z6, which would come in an SI or an EX. There was nothing really to modify. Again, just that fuel rail and a distributor issue, but that's it. Everything else is a bolt-in project, and this car runs healthy. Now, I found that I had an issue the last couple times I've been running the car. The thermostat isn't opening. So again, this car is in Vegas. I'm not going to have to worry about this thing freezing. I'm only going to be running distilled water in it. So I pulled this thermostat out. I'm going to use the gasket from it, put it back inside the housing there, and then put the other piece on, that one. No, this filter will not be used for daily use. This is going to get changed. But this is actually in a legit AEM intake. I will be changing the filter, and I got that with the swap as well. So, hey, $450 to throw this car together, make it run, works for me. Let's see, what else? I'm sure I'm missing a few things. This aftermarket radiator, these hoses are a little bit bigger than the outlets that are on the motor. So, I mean, with a tight enough clamp, it'll seal up without an issue. Fine. There is some things, like I said, I have to button up on the car to make it perfect. This car was in an accident, so the hood doesn't exactly line up perfect, but I've since fixed the latch, because when I got it, that latch was completely foobar. So I've since gotten all three bolts mounted back in, straightened it up somewhat. This whole support I've straightened out a little more. I'm trying to get these headlights leveled out. This wire is just for the fan. I'm running the fan on a switch now. Well, for now, since the temp sensor wire is MIA. So at least I know when I start it, I can turn a fan on once I actually have like pressure and temp in both of my hoses, this one and the lower, when it's routed back where it's supposed to be. If you have any questions or comments on something I'm missing or something I'm maybe even doing wrong, feel free to post them in the comments. I'll do my best to respond and or answer. I appreciate any tips that anyone has, and I'll have videos of this running, if not today, maybe tomorrow afternoon.